Well, I'm joined in the studio by my guest, Marshall Gore. He's the chairman of the Africa Cup of Nations UK, to talk about our top story, and that's the latest controversy surrounding the Qatar World Cup. The construction firm Vinci have denied claims that they're using forced labour on projects to build new facilities for the tournament. Now, Marshall, you've seen the story. What are your views?
I think globally, migration and labour issues are a concern. It's an area that has not been addressed, with major key players, and human rights activists have taken it upon themselves to unravel issues of pretty much described as slavery by this French human rights activities group. I think, to me, we really need to get this looked into. I know, obviously, there's been kind of like a mantra with most of the Western media to try and clamp down on Qatar because of issues related to them being awarded the World Cup bid. But I think focusing more on the humanitarian side, I think this is an issue where international organizations need to look into, and there should be pressure put in the Qatar Labour Ministry to actually do proper investigations and ensure that this is well regulated, because it's unfair in the 21st century to hear of these things happening.
Well, where does the buck stop? Is it with FIFA, Qatar, or the construction firm?
I think, surprisingly, I think it should be a collective effort. I know Sepp Blatter has issued a statement and said FIFA are categorically deassociating themselves with this. They say it's a labour issue which relates to these corporate firms that own the company and won the tenders to do this. But I think a certain degree of pressure should also come from FIFA to enforce and ensure that proper regulation of laws is put into place so that workers that are working are treated as human and get a fair deal for what they are contributing.
But who are in charge of the working conditions? I mean, they get to work in very humid situations, and in the atmosphere, there's been quite a few deaths as well.
Yeah, I think this is concerning. This is why I'm saying this is very alarming when you look at it. And if you look at the composition of Qatar itself, I think almost, I would say almost more than 60% of its labour force is immigrants that are coming from Asia, from India and Bangladesh. So what you need also is the government involvement in ensuring that there's proper regulation of the construction industry itself, to ensure that there are bylaws in place to ensure that workers' safety and the minimum wage which pertains to Qatar is enforced, and ensure that people actually get a fair deal of what they deserve. So it's unfair to hear of this, and I think international organizations, and FIFA included as well, should lobby and put pressure to the Qatar government.
Are they turning a blind eye to this? I mean, it's not exactly new, this topic.
I don't think it is new, and I think when you equate it as well, that obviously the spotlight is on Qatar now because of the 2022 World Cup, but I think there's a lot of issues like this globally where migration and labour do intertally, and you always get immigrants getting a raw deal in terms of what they vouch for. And this is actually pretty much common also in other European countries, but not to the magnitude that it has been exposed to in Qatar. But it certainly needs the Qatar government, Ministry of Sports and Labour, to come together and ensure that this is resolved, because it doesn't do good for them. Benching on the aspect that they want the World Cup to come to Qatar, to brand Qatar itself, and issues like this will not help.
Exactly. Well, thank you very much for your views in the first part. We'll talk to you in the second. Moving on now. Now, imagine being at the top of your sport for years, but suddenly having to learn a completely different version. Well, that's exactly what happened in Sudan, and it's all thanks to a Japanese initiative that came about by accident. Ian McBride reports.
In a crumbling Khartoum sports hall, a dozen Nuba men practice wrestling moves under the critical gaze of their Japanese coach. Wrestling has been a part of Nuba culture for thousands of years, and many of the athletes entered the ring as soon as they were old enough to walk. But this is a new challenge, to learn the Olympic version of the sport. Their coach is a Japanese youth wrestling champion, and he's been given the task of building a medal-winning Olympic team.
The fighting's ongoing in the Nuba areas, which is the located in South Kordofan, and this is the area that Nuba wrestling was originated more than a few thousand years ago. So as I told you, that the war is ongoing and the fighting is ongoing, but the sport is something different. There's people can get united together.
Olympic wrestling is well established in Japan, but its interest in the Nuba version of the sport started just 2 years ago, when a diplomat challenged some local champions. He lost all 6 bouts, but the fights proved highly popular, and Japan seized the chance to launch a highly unusual diplomatic initiative.
There are many challenges. There are no suitable facilities to train for Olympic wrestling. We know that there is a big presence of Nuba wrestling, but we want to move this to an Olympic level.
Despite Japan's expertise in the sport, it's a big challenge for the local fighters, learning a different version of a technique they've practiced over generations. In Nuba wrestling, a competitor wins simply by throwing his opponent to the ground. The Olympic version awards points for different moves, and a player only wins automatically by pinning his opponent to the mat.
We learn many things from the coach, such as speeding and talent. We will do our best to win the bronze medal in the Olympic Games, God willing.
6 of the best, 4 players and 2 trainee coaches, will travel to Japan next month for intensive training in the hope of qualifying for Rio in 2016 or Tokyo 4 years later. Ian McBride, Arise News.
Every night here on Global Sports Report, we like to nominate someone from the world of sport as our most valuable player. And tonight, we've picked Walter Toll, who died on this day in '90 in the most tragic of circumstances. Faith Orr has more on his life and legacy.
Walter Toll was born in Folkestone on the 28th of April 1888. His father was a carpenter from Barbados. By the age of 9, Walter had lost both his parents, and when he was 10, he and his brother Edward were sent to an orphanage. But they were to go down very separate paths. His brother left the orphanage 2 years later, was adopted by a Scottish family, and became a dentist. Meanwhile, Walter played for the orphanage football team, a move that was to set him on the path to professional football. In 1908, he began playing for Clapton FC, and within a few months had winners' medals in the FA Amateur Cup, London County Amateur Cup and London Senior Cup. A year later, he signed professionally for Tottenham Hotspur. In October 1911, Walter moved to Northampton Town, and when the First World War broke out, he became the first Northampton player to sign up to join the 17th, 1st Football Battalion of the Middlesex Regiment. The Army soon recognised Walter's leadership qualities, and he was quickly promoted to the rank of sergeant. Despite military regulations forbidding, as they put it, any Negro or person of colour being an officer, Walter Toll received his commission in May 1917. He had several successes in Italy and had signed to play for Rangers FC once the war was over. But it was not to be. On the 25th of March 1918, 2nd Lieutenant Toll was ordered to lead his men, all white troops, was killed by a German bullet. Faith Orr, Arise News.
Well, joining us in the studio to talk about that remarkable story is my guest, Marshall Gore. Now, we've just watched that story. He was more than football, wasn't he?
Yeah, it's amazing. It shows really where football has come in terms of the strives and struggles of equality within the profession itself. That there were a lot of people who sacrificed quite a lot to get us to where we are now, although we are not yet there, but I think we are getting there.
And what's his legacy?
I think his legacy is the will to fight against the system and the will to demonstrate that against all odds, if you're good at what you're doing, even if there are racialist motives surrounding you, but at least you can make people believe that you're a strong leader and you know what you're capable of doing, and them actually succumbing and naming him a regiment leader was quite an amazing story to hear. Very touching tribute and story. It's a shame that he never got to realize his dream during the First World War, that he died before you could go on and sign on for Rangers enhance his footballing career after contributing to the war.
Well, how far do you think we've come in terms of race relations, not just in sport, well, in sport, but in football?
I think we have made some progress, and I think the FA have made some progress. I do some work as well with Kick It Out, which is a racism eradicative initiative, which is a charitable organisation, obviously, that works hard to fulfil some of the mandate that the FA has put forward. But I think also it's, like you've said, that if we start to fight racism using football alone, it's not good enough. I think it's a society issue. The mentality has to change throughout the way we live, wherever we are.
How do we make those changes?
I think we make those changes by ensuring that we enforce any signs of racial motive that come out even at school level, that come out even in workplaces. There should be a stringent and robust way of dealing with these issues rather than sweeping them under the carpet. And I think with the emerging rise of social media now, a lot of things have started to be brought to the public attention now. I think we need swift action. We need policies and procedures that enable organizations, all associations, to deal swiftly with issues of race, either in our workplaces or in football communities or football clubs at large.
Okay, well, keeping with the topic of football, you are, of course, the chairman of the Africa Cup of Nations UK. What's going to be happening with the tournament?
Well, we are planning our 2015 tournament, which kicks off on the 30th of May. And before that, we have our official draw at Wembley Stadium on the 10th of April. So that's the first thing in line before the big tournament. The tournament preparations have been going very well. We have sponsors on board, Ethiopian Airlines, Libera, and also World Remit. They've come on board to support us. So this year is going to be bigger and better. I can certainly promise all the communities that they should join us at Easter Memorial Stadium. Right. To be a big fest of football.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for joining me on tonight's show.
Thanks for hosting me.
All right, let's take a look at what's been getting the world's sporting attention on social media today. And a war of words in Formula One has spilled out onto Twitter. Red Bull's top designer is feuding with the team's engine suppliers, Renault, over the time it's taken to deliver their new engine. The boss of the French company posted this picture ahead of this weekend's second race of the championship season, along with the words, packing up to Malaysia race round 2. Ooh, touchy. Keeping with boxing and to what's been billed as the fight of the century and the richest bout in boxing history, Floyd Mayweather's camp are doing their best to keep up the interest by releasing this video of their man in training ahead of his encounter with Manny Pacquiao. Not much needs to be said about this, really. You don't really need to sell it, but I think Sky have got the rights, so you can watch it in the UK. Right. That's it for this edition of the Global Sports Report. We'll be back tomorrow at 21:30 GMT. See you then.